I watched in shock as my own sister walked to the witness stand and swore under oath that I had a prescription drug problem. The woman who'd shared my childhood bedroom, who knew me better than almost anyone, was now helping my ex-husband steal my children. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you completely trusted, someone whose loyalty you never questioned? If you have, drop a comment below and let me know if you saw the warning signs. Hit like if you're ready to hear how this betrayal ends. My name is Olivia Reynolds, and until last year I thought I had a pretty normal life. At 36, I worked as a pediatric nurse at Denver Children's Hospital. I had been married to Michael for 12 years. We were raising our two beautiful kids, Emma, who was 10, and Noah, who was 7. I loved my job, my family, and even had a decent relationship with my younger sister Rebecca, despite our childhood rivalries. When Michael first asked for a divorce, I was devastated but not completely surprised. We'd been growing apart for years, both of us working long hours, living more like roommates than partners. We agreed to keep things amicable for the kids. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly. We worked out a temporary joint custody arrangement while the divorce was being finalized. The kids would stay with me during the week since my apartment was closer to their school, and they'd spend weekends with Michael at our old house, which he kept in the settlement. Rebecca had been supportive throughout the early stages, coming over with wine and ice cream, listening to me vent, and offering to watch the kids when I picked up extra shifts to cover my new living expenses. She'd always been close with Michael. They shared an interest in hiking and photography that I never had, but I never thought anything of it. Then came the custody hearing. What was supposed to be a formality to make our temporary arrangement permanent suddenly turned into a nightmare. Michael's lawyer requested sole physical custody with limited supervised visitation for me. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. His grounds? That I was allegedly abusing prescription medications and was an unfit mother. I was blindsided. As a nurse, I occasionally took prescribed muscle relaxants for an old back injury, but I was always careful and responsible. The true betrayal came when they called their star witness, Rebecca. My sister walked to the stand, avoided my eyes, and proceeded to tell the court that she had serious concerns about my parenting. She claimed she'd found me passed out on the couch many times while watching the kids, that she'd noticed pills missing from my medicine cabinet. Emma had called her once because Mommy wouldn't wake up. None of it was true, not a single word. I watched in disbelief as my sister, my flesh and blood, systematically destroyed my reputation and my chance at keeping my children. The judge, concerned by testimony from such a close family member, awarded temporary primary custody to Michael, with me getting only supervised visits twice a week until I could prove sobriety with regular drug testing and counseling. In one afternoon, I lost my children and my dignity. I left the courthouse in a daze, ignoring Rebecca as she tried to approach me. "Olivia, I'm sorry, but I had to think of the kids." I walked away before I could hear any more of her lies. The next few weeks were the darkest of my life. I submitted to the humiliating drug tests, which of course came back clean except for my prescribed medication at appropriate levels. I attended the mandated counseling sessions. I went through the motions at work, though my supervisor placed me on probation after learning about the custody hearing, another devastating blow to my career. During my supervised visits, Emma and Noah seemed confused and distant. "Daddy says you're sick and need to get better," Emma told me during one visit, breaking my heart all over again. "Then you can come home." But I wasn't sick. I was angry, hurt, and beginning to suspect that something far more sinister was happening than just Michael wanting custody. The first clue came during a supervised visit about a month after the hearing. Noah was showing me a drawing he'd made and casually mentioned, "Aunt Becca makes pancakes at our house on Sundays now. She puts chocolate chips in mine, just like you do." I kept my face neutral. "That's nice. Does Aunt Becca visit a lot?" Emma looked up from her book. "She's there all the time. Sometimes she sleeps over in Daddy's room when she stays too late. They have sleepovers like I do with my friends." The supervisor didn't seem to notice the bomb that had just been dropped. I carefully changed the subject, but my mind was racing. Rebecca and Michael? Could they be? No, my sister wouldn't do that to me. But then why had she lied in court? Over the next few visits, I gently asked more questions, piecing together a disturbing picture. Rebecca wasn't just visiting. According to my children, she was practically living there. She had clothes in Michael's closet. She drove them to school sometimes. She and Michael would whisper and stop talking when the kids entered the room. I needed to know more, but I had to be careful. If Michael could paint me as unstable for asking about my sister's relationship with him, it would only hurt my case for regaining custody. An unexpected ally emerged in the form of Mrs. Martinez, an elderly woman who lived next door to Michael. She had always been fond of me and the children. One day, after my supervised visit ended at a park near their home, she approached me while the court-appointed supervisor was packing up. "Olivia, dear, I've been hoping to run into you," she said, her eyes conveying concern. "Things at the house. They're not what they seem. If you need a friend, come have tea with me next Tuesday at 3. I'm usually alone then." The following Tuesday, I called in a personal day at work and went to Mrs. Martinez's house. She ushered me in quickly and sat me down at her kitchen table. "I know you're a good mother," she said firmly. "And I see things being home all day. Your sister's car is there most nights, has been for months, even before your divorce." My stomach dropped. Before the divorce. Mrs. Martinez nodded grimly. I didn't want to get involved in family matters, but when I heard about what happened in court, that just isn't right. She revealed that she had installed security cameras after a series of car break-ins in the neighborhood last year. Her system captured the front of her house, but also the street and part of Michael's driveway. "I keep the footage for 2 months before it records over itself," she explained, pulling out her iPad. "I've been saving certain clips." What she showed me confirmed my worst fears. There was Rebecca's car, parked overnight at least 3 times a week for the past several months, including periods before Michael and I had even separated. In one clip from 2 weeks before he asked for a divorce, the timestamp showed her arriving at 10 p.m. on a night when I was working the overnight shift at the hospital. The next clip showed her leaving at 6 a.m. the next morning. "There's more," Mrs. Martinez said softly. "About 3 weeks before your custody hearing, I was gardening and overheard them talking on the back deck. They didn't see me because of the hedge, but I heard your sister say something about making sure it's convincing and the prescription angle is our best shot. I didn't understand what it meant then, but I felt physically ill. They had planned this. They had conspired to take my children from me. But I needed more evidence. Security footage showing Rebecca's car proved they were seeing each other, but it didn't prove they had fabricated evidence against me. I thanked Mrs. Martinez and asked if she'd be willing to testify if it came to that. She agreed without hesitation. "Those children belong with their mother," she said firmly. Armed with this first piece of evidence, I began building my case methodically. I hired a private investigator with money I borrowed against my retirement account. I needed concrete proof of their relationship and, more importantly, of their conspiracy. The PI discovered that Rebecca had changed her pharmacy to the same one Michael used, just 2 blocks from his house. He also found that Rebecca had taken a week off work right after the custody hearing, the same week Michael and the children went to his family's cabin in the mountains. Social media showed no posts from her that week, but the PI confirmed her car wasn't at her apartment. Meanwhile, I maintained a calm facade. I continued my supervised visits, never letting on what I knew. I passed all my drug tests with flying colors and received glowing reports from my court-mandated therapist. I was playing the long game now. The breakthrough came 3 months after the custody hearing. Emma left her tablet at my apartment after a visit. When I turned it on to check if there was anything important she needed before I returned it, I noticed she had been using Michael's old phone to play games. He must have given it to her after upgrading his device. With shaking hands, I opened the messaging app, knowing I was crossing a line but desperate for answers. Most conversations had been deleted, but Michael hadn't been thorough. There, in a text chain with Rebecca from 7 months ago, 2 months before our separation, was the smoking gun. "Michael, miss you already. Wish you could have stayed longer." Rebecca, me too, getting tired of sneaking around. Michael, just a little longer. Once I talk to Olivia and get things rolling, we won't have to hide anymore. Rebecca, what if she fights for full custody? You know how she is with the kids. Michael will cross that bridge. Worst case, there are ways to make sure she looks unfit. I scrolled through more messages, my hands trembling as I discovered the full extent of their betrayal. They had been having an affair for over a year. The divorce wasn't about growing apart, it was about Michael wanting my sister. But the most damning messages were from the weeks leading up to the custody hearing. "Rebecca, I'm nervous about testifying. What exactly should I say?" "Michael, just stick to what we practiced. The times you found her passed out, how the kids were unsupervised." "Rebecca, but none of that happened." "Michael, it doesn't matter. Your word against hers, and you're the concerned aunt, not the one with a prescription history. The judge will side with us." "Rebecca, and then we can be a family. Me, you, and the kids." "Michael, that's the plan. Olivia will get supervised visits until she gives up fighting. She'll eventually move on." I felt sick to my stomach. They had methodically planned to strip me of my children so they could play house together. My sister wanted to replace me not just in Michael's bed, but as my children's mother. But the most chilling discovery was yet to come. As I kept reading, I found messages discussing how they had planted evidence. "Rebecca, the pill bottles are in place. One in her bathroom with the label partially removed, one in her bedside table with too few pills for the fill date. Michael, perfect. And you've got the photos of her passed out on the couch." "Rebecca, yes, from when she had the flu last winter. You can't tell she was actually sick in the pictures." They had staged evidence, used photos of me when I was legitimately ill with influenza to paint me as an addict, planted pill bottles to create the impression I was misusing medication. I documented everything on the tablet, forwarding the messages to my email and taking screenshots. Then I returned the tablet, continuing to play the role of the cooperative ex-wife who was working on her issues. But inside, something fundamental had changed. The pain and shock had crystallized into cold, clear purpose. They had underestimated me. They thought I would eventually give up fighting for my children. They were wrong. I consulted with a new attorney, one who specialized in high-conflict custody cases. When I showed her the evidence I'd gathered, her expression turned from professional interest to righteous indignation. "This is perjury, evidence tampering, and potentially fraud upon the court," she said. "With this and the security footage, we have grounds to request an emergency hearing to change custody." But I wanted more than just custody. I wanted accountability. I wanted everyone to know what they had done. My attorney filed motions with the family court while I continued gathering evidence. The PI discovered that Rebecca had accessed my personal medical records through the hospital system where she worked as an administrator, a serious HIPAA violation that could end her career. She had searched for anything related to my prescription history to help build their false narrative. I also learned from Mrs. Martinez that Rebecca had been telling neighbors I was in rehab, explaining why she was suddenly so involved with my children's lives. The final piece fell into place when Noah came to a supervised visit with a handmade card for his new mom. When I gently asked who that was, he said, "Daddy says Aunt Becca will be my new mom soon because you're too sick to take care of us." They were poisoning my children against me, preparing them for Rebecca to formally step into my role. Something in me that had been barely holding together finally broke. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 6 months after the original custody ruling. 6 months of playing by their rules, of limited time with my children, of watching my sister try to steal my life. But I was ready. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully in a conservative blue dress that projected both professionalism and maternal warmth. My attorney had prepared me extensively for what was to come. Michael and Rebecca arrived together, looking confident. They clearly weren't expecting what happened next. My attorney methodically presented the evidence. The security footage showing Rebecca's overnight stays predating our separation, the text messages revealing their conspiracy and evidence tampering, the HIPAA violations, and Mrs. Martinez's testimony about overhearing their planning. The judge's expression grew increasingly grave as the evidence mounted. When presented with the text messages explicitly discussing how they would plant evidence and lie under oath, Rebecca went pale. Michael tried to claim the messages were taken out of context. Then came the masterstroke. My attorney called an unexpected witness, Dr. Alina Chen, the head of pharmacy at our hospital, who testified that she had conducted an audit of my prescription history at my request and found nothing irregular or concerning about my medication use. In fact, Dr. Chen stated, Ms. Reynolds' use of her prescribed muscle relaxant was notably conservative, often taking less than the prescribed dosage and refilling prescriptions less frequently than allowed. The judge called a brief recess. When the court resumed, his expression was thunderous. The evidence presented today suggests a deliberate conspiracy to deceive this court and deprive a mother of custody through false testimony and fabricated evidence, he said. I am immediately vacating the previous custody order and temporarily awarding sole physical custody to Ms. Reynolds while this matter is further investigated. He looked directly at Michael and Rebecca. And I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential perjury charges. Ms. Green, he addressed Rebecca, I suggest you consult with an attorney about the alleged HIPAA violations, as those carry their own significant penalties. I watched as Michael and Rebecca left the courtroom in stunned silence, their perfect plan in ruins. But this was just the beginning of their reckoning. That evening, as I tucked Emma and Noah into their beds in my apartment for the first time in 6 months, Noah looked up at me with confusion in his eyes. Are you not sick anymore, Mommy? He asked. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I was never sick, sweetie. There was a big misunderstanding, but it's fixed now. I'm not going anywhere. But what about Aunt Becca? Emma asked. Daddy said she was going to be our new mom. Aunt Becca made some bad choices, I said carefully. She and Daddy won't be seeing us for a little while. The full consequences for Michael and Rebecca unfolded over the following weeks. The hospital board suspended Rebecca pending investigation of the HIPAA violations. When the full story leaked to hospital staff, something I had nothing to do with, though several of my nursing colleagues had access to the public court documents, her professional reputation was destroyed. Michael faced his own professional fallout. As a financial advisor whose business depended on trust, the news that he had conspired to falsely paint his ex-wife as an addict and committed perjury spread quickly through his client base. Within months, his practice was struggling. The district attorney ultimately declined to pursue criminal perjury charges due to the complexity of proving intent beyond a reasonable doubt, but the damage was done. Michael and Rebecca had lost something far more valuable than a court case. They had lost their reputations, their credibility, and in Michael's case, the relationship with his children. The final custody agreement granted me primary custody, with Michael receiving limited supervised visitation twice a month. Rebecca was barred from being present during these visits. She eventually left Denver entirely, moving to Arizona after being formally reprimanded by the Medical Licensing Board and finding herself unhireable in local hospitals. Our extended family, initially misled by their lies, reached out one by one to apologize and reconnect. Some relationships were salvageable, others were damaged beyond repair. My parents, who had been cruelly caught in the middle, finally heard the full truth when I sent them copies of the court transcripts and evidence. My mother couldn't speak to Rebecca for months afterward. Would you believe this is the most satisfying part of my story? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a moment where the truth finally came to light after you were wrongfully accused. Give this video a like if you're still with me through this journey. A year after the emergency hearing, I received a letter from Rebecca. She wrote that she and Michael had broken up shortly after losing in court, that she was in therapy, and that she recognized the enormity of her betrayal. She asked for forgiveness, saying she had been blinded by her feelings for Michael and her lifelong jealousy of me. I never responded. Some betrayals go beyond forgiveness. Emma and Noah slowly healed from the confusion and trauma. With the help of a skilled child therapist, they came to understand that the things they had been told about me were untrue. My relationship with them grew stronger than ever, built on a foundation of hard-won truth and resilience. As for me, I was not the same person I had been before. The woman who trusted easily, who believed in the fundamental decency of others, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more cautious, and fiercely protective of what was hers. Sometimes Emma asks about her aunt, expressing confusion about why someone who said she loved them would lie. I don't have perfect answers. I simply tell her that sometimes people make terrible choices, and while we can eventually forgive them, we don't have to let them back into our lives to hurt us again. Last month, I received a promotion to nursing supervisor, rebuilding the career that had nearly been destroyed. We moved into a new house, one that has never known Michael or Rebecca's presence. It's smaller than our old home, but it's ours, filled with laughter and truth. The road to reclaiming my life and my children was long and painful, but I would walk it again in a heartbeat. Because there is no betrayal deep enough, no lie convincing enough, no conspiracy powerful enough to separate a mother from her children when she refuses to give up. They thought they could bury me. They didn't realize I was a seed. And from the darkness of their betrayal, I grew back stronger than they could have imagined. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a devastating betrayal? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more real stories about overcoming life's darkest challenges. Remember, sometimes the people who try to break you end up allowing you to discover how unbreakable you truly are.